As we're waiting for
Ooh,
everybody.
he's so distant.
So we had Katie Ellen here. Lovely Katie Ellen was our very first employee. The very first person we hired in our company. And she was with us for, I don't know, a good while and tried to quit a couple times, finally successfully quit for about 8 months, and then came back with begging on my part. And so is our longest tenured staff and has been through all the growth and the pain and the frustration, and started off in a little office with me and her, and Greg was in a different office. And I tried to teach her everything I knew, and I quickly became apparent that that didn't take very long. And she flips to me and is now a director of content for the for Virtual Advisor product, but prior had been a copywriter for a number of years, writing landing pages and websites and all manner of stuff. And really anything that needed doing, Katie was the gal that did it. In addition to being an excellent writer, Katie is also a professional comedian, and I'm not going to ask you to tell any jokes, and has a lot of experience with writing, I guess, stories or writing, I don't know, what do you call it, a bit that you would write for a comedy show or a play or something like that. What are those called?
Yeah, so I mean, in that case, I would just call them jokes or bits or things. But yeah, I thought at one time I was going to be a playwright. That was my initial, I think when you and I met, when I was just a little baby writer.
Yeah.
That's what I had in mind. But it turns out, like, you got to do that in the dark by yourself mostly for a real long time.
The pay is terrible too.
Yeah, that's another part of it. Also, you also end up hanging out with theater people a lot. So, what are you going to do?
Yeah. So it's relevant to the model that Katie's going to be sharing today on how to write really amazing copy. And the reason I bring it up is partly to just brag about this wonderful person that's been in my life for, 16 years now, thereabouts? And,
coming up there, yeah.
Yeah, and partly because this is going to, as she was preparing notes for this, it's I think a different way of thinking about copywriting that's wildly effective. So I'm really excited about this presentation. So I'm going to turn my video off in hopes that I won't get kicked out of this thing.
Sure.
And if you could share your screen and bring up the slides, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Hey, look at that nice title page. Okay. So as we've already introduced Shane and myself. And yeah, what I want to start out with is I want to propose that my main tip and my main thesis for this whole talk is that your landing page and your ads and all of it is that you are telling a story. And I don't mean to say, oh, this is Yolanda. She was a single mother, and now she was working 2 jobs and was overextended and wasn't able to spend a lot of time with her kids, but she found our program, and now within a year, that is a great story, but that's sort of a piece of your story. So when I say tell a story, I mean top to bottom, your landing page, the whole thing is a story. And really, when we tell stories, and we do everything that we do sort of in our culture is done in the same arc, is the same, has a traditional, beginning, middle, and end. And we love stories. I don't even just mean English speaking people or in North America or in Western culture, globally, just as humans, we love them. It's how we understand our world, is through story. This is why global religions, they all have fables. This is why when we make arguments we structure them in the same, they always have the same sort of arc. And I don't have a great reason for why. I'm not sociological.
It's how we're wired. This is the oral tradition, right? That was pre-printing press. We had the oral tradition. That's how our history was passed down in front of the fire. People just telling stories as metaphors for life and culture. This is hardwired into us. That's your notion.
Well, that's right. Yeah, yeah. And absolutely. And there's really what story allows us, particularly Shane makes a great point, when it wasn't an oral tradition and before we had printing press and things like that to mark things down, why story is effective is because the information in a story is laid out in a natural way. So this is a little festive thing here. This is, of course, a scene from The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. And this is towards the end. And look at it, all these little Whovillians, and they're holding hands and they're singing, and it's beautiful. But if you only saw this scene, it would have an impact, right? You'd be watching very tiny-headed people singing a beautiful song about Christmas, and that would be nice. But it's when if you know that the Grinch has stolen Christmas and that they are singing anyway, that piece has so much more impact. And I know that's a very silly example, but this, in a landing page example, this would be like, say, your career services. If I'm hearing about your career services, that's great. That's super nice. That's an excellent feature. But if I don't know who you are, or if you're able to give me training in an area I'm interested in, then hearing about your career services it's not as meaningful because I've gotten it in the wrong order. So what we've got here is a classic story arc. Every story that we have, every Shakespearean tragedy, comedy, all of the Greek fables, all of your favorite movies, everything follows this classic arc. There's gonna be like one or two, maybe auteur Christopher Nolan things that are, gonna try to play with this, but ultimately they sort of all are still in the same arc. Everything that we take in our culture, all of our stories are in the same function. Mm-hmm. And I propose that your landing page, the structure of your landing page, can function the same way. So what we've got up here is your landing page copy as a classic story arc. And another way to think about your story arc, rather than beginning and then your plot points up into your climax and to end, another model, and it's the same story model, and then we go back to all the time from our school age, is your classic 5-paragraph essay. So another way to think about your landing page is an essay in that way. So your opening scene, if it were an essay, sorry, mixing my metaphors here now, but your opening scene, that's really your thesis statement here. So when I come on your page, we're at the beginning of the story. I'm opening the book for the first time. I'm on your landing page. And the opening scene and those opening pages, I need to learn, if it was a story or a fable, I'm learning my main characters. So I'm learning, who are you? That's the story you tell me with your logo, your name placement, that type of thing. I'm learning it maybe in your headline. I'm learning it from your hero image. And I'm learning what I can do on this page, maybe from a call to action in the front. So that's setting the scene. I know where I am, and I'm not jumping in the middle of the story. So that can reduce my anxiety. It's very easy. I don't know if any of you have watched TV or movies with a friend or maybe a parent or something, and you turn it on and they ask you immediately, who's that character? Who's that? Like you didn't just turn on the TV at the same time. Mm-hmm. So when we don't know things, it causes anxiety. So that's why that opening scene, that's why things like having a clear hero image on the top, having a clear headline. Katie, that's what, yeah.
Yeah, Katie. And so the folks, the branding oriented folks, right? So we've over the years, we've noticed there's sort of different focal points for different businesses. And if we're working with another marketing company or there's a team in place or something, sometimes they're very brand focused, right? They're like, oh, it's got to look just so, and we want it to be reflective of our brand, and that's really important to them. Is it fair to say that branding is kind of the opening scene?
Yeah, I would say that. Here we are in Fair Verona or what have you, like we open it up. Where are we? And that sets a scene, but it's not the story.
Yes, that's, I guess, where I'm going with it, is it's not the story. And when we've seen people who focus exclusively or heavily weighted on brand-oriented things, that's really the failing in that approach, right? Because it assumes it can do stuff it can't.
Yeah, and it's not, yeah, it's not compelling. It doesn't serve your reader, and it's also even, or if you're, another mistake that we see is, so if you look at here, I've got at plot point here, I'm jumping ahead now to plot point 3, but I say why your school.
Mhm.
If you open with telling me about how great your school is, that's like opening and reading the second to last chapter of a book.
Mhm.
I don't have any idea why any of that information that I'm reading in the second to last chapter has any value, because I haven't come along the pathway. I don't know why it's exciting that the two lovers got together in the end. Because I don't know them yet. I don't know that their parents wouldn't let them, or whatever the story was.
Mhm.
There's a natural progression of how we need to take in information, and again, to go back to that's why, so that introduction, that's really your thesis. You set the stage. So on a landing page, let's say that your thesis is, Shane College is the place to get training as a dental assistant, for example, in a short amount of time. Now, everything on that page is going to support that thesis, that stage that you've set. So we know from then, that's the information I have. Hey, great, this is a school where I can get some short-term training for this career, which I'm interested in because I searched for it.
Mm-hmm.
What I see when I take a look at a page, oftentimes it's driven by design rather than content. So we have, some great developer has come up with an excellent form, or it looks really great. And what is really easy to do, particularly when you work in a field or you work at a school, is to take for granted that your reader knows what you know. And that's why this story structure, I find it very helpful. Think about, if I'm opening up this book from the beginning, these first plot points that I want. So what I've marked here is plot point number 1, why this career? And so the content that you can put in that part, so this is what we're talking about in your intro paragraph, and maybe the first couple sections on your landing page. This is where you want to talk about the character traits of a successful professional in that field. So what type of people are successful in this career? What type of people find this type of work satisfying? Because you're still trying to appeal to the reader, make them see themselves there. So again, if it's as an example, if we're talking a front-facing patient interaction career, so medical assisting or something like that in the medical field where you're working directly with patients, that's a type of career that's we're going to be using words like rewarding, or people that really like working with others, helping with others. That's going to be super important to that type of reader.
Mm-hmm.
They need to see that. And a copy that highlights the main appeal of the career. So why would someone be drawn to that career? And also, this might seem, this might seem rudimentary, but I often, in those first couple paragraphs, I like to include really basic details about the career. So really, what is it? Because we also like reinforcement. We also, even if you think that they know, let's say, what a dental assistant is, it's reassuring to read information that also to confirm that you have it correct. So
that's the appeal of basically any personality test in existence, right? You fill it out and you get a little report, and then you read about yourself and, oh yeah, it's just like me. Wow. Right?
Yes.
It's a psychological quirk of human beings.
Great example. I am an Aquarius and I have no idea what that means, but I have a lot of friends who say things like, oh, you're such an Aquarius. And I believe them no matter what it was. They say, oh, you worked hard, you're an Aquarius. And I'm like, yeah, totally.
And Katie, the why this career part is also important, because in setting the stage, I can say it in a different way. For example, we got stumped on a landing page a little while ago, and you're the one that diagnosed the problem. It was we equivocated the motivations of a medical office assistant with the motivations of like a medical billing person, right? Because they're both allied health programs. They're kind of nurturing personalities. They want to help people. That's what's driving. And then you're the one that identified that, well, hold your horses. the medical office assistant, right, is probably a nurturer by nature. You know, that's part of what the why this career would be appealing for them. The medical billing person, you know, you're not drawing blood, or there's some blood and gut stuff. You don't want to be around gross people and bodily things. You just want to order, right? They're more kindred to a bookkeeper, or you know, a legal assistant than they are a medical office person. So by setting the stage, right, you're gonna repel the ones that aren't candidates anyway, but you're gonna do a better job of drawing in the person that is a match for what that program is, right? Because God help us if we enroll a bunch of, you know, nurturers into a medical billing program, none of them are going to complete, even if we manage to sell them.
That's right. So in that page, as an example, there were character traits up at in that first paragraph where I would advise that they be, but they weren't the right ones, right? So that's what Shane's saying. And where we can run into trouble with that is when we get to, if we think about we're not specific enough. Mm-hmm. And so that's like the difference between the character development in a Hallmark movie and the character development in, you know, your favorite novel. So yeah, that's like when you write a page just to the industry to say like all, you know, this is trades careers, when you're really trying to sell a specific trade career. You want to get granular in that.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about plot point 2.
Yeah, plot point 2. So once we have established those initial plot points, we've eased them in, we've shown them who we are and what the career actually is. That's when we can get in. We still want to be focused on the career. So we still haven't got into anything about the school too heavy. This is when we want to drill a little bit deeper. So we've proven to this reader that they are a suitable candidate. They're the type of person who could be successful or might enjoy this type of career. Why should they get into this career though? Why now? Why this career? And this is where you can put things like your career outlook stats, industry trend reports, employment data for your area. This is where, again, you're empowering your reader. So this is really just doing some of that internet research that you would want them to do and doing it for them and supplying this information. I don't know if sorry, go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, and maybe a tip on this one is specific is better than general. So for any statistic, if it's, you know, about 90% isn't as strong as 93.2%, right? It's kind of a credibility. Is that fair to say it's a part of the credibility building?
Yeah, absolutely. And also if it's research, they're not looking to be oversold on it here. They're not saying, oh, 100% of people are super successful and happy in this career. They want real stats. And so, Bureau of Labor Statistics are great for Outlook stats, but even better if you have them, if you have state by state or town, region by region, if you have employment stats specifically for your town, which you can also get through Bureau of Labor Stats sometimes, but oftentimes your state level, if they have that information, is going to be stronger. Or if you have you could start moving your school stuff in here if you had specific to your program and your area, graduation or employment rates. Mm-hmm. We could put that in now. It's also an area to talk about now, where it also shows, it keeps your page up to date, because, becoming a medical assistant in 2021 is different than becoming a medical assistant in 2019 or 2020. Like, it even shows it. This is a way where you can show that this page is absolutely up to date. Not only that your industry stats are up to date, but you can talk about the current nature of that, mm-hmm. of that business right now, of that job right now, what that job is going to look like in 8 months or 15 months, or whenever this person, if they started the career training now, when they graduate. This is where you can talk about the actual industry that they will be going into. Mm-hmm. And so that also positions you as an ambassador for this person. You know about this industry that they're interested in.
Yeah, interesting. What does social proof mean?
Social proof. So this is where you're going to get those third-party endorsements that are so strong. So if you have graduate testimonials, that's going to be, of course, your strongest. If you have employer testimonials, those are going to be great. And that's where we want to lead. This is when we start to talk about your school. And if you can have a third party talk about your school for you, of course, that's where you're going to, they're going to do that hard, heavy lifting for you. And you don't have to just, list a thing of benefits or we do these things. You can have someone who's gone through your school talk about that and add credibility that way. And then after we've done those things, so now this is again, so for in our classic story arc, we're really at the climax here. We've been introduced, they've come all of this way with you. They've had this social proof, and that's when you can start getting into those nittier, grittier details. So that's when you can be talking about your employment support services or some of the maybe things on your campus that you want to highlight, the actual model, the way that your program will function. If you have pivoted to, a blended learning, what does that really look like for them? And from there, now that all that information is out, then you just want to reinforce that. So again, what we're looking at here, this classic story arc, another way to think about this is your classic 5-paragraph essay. So in that opening scene, in your first essay, in your first paragraph here, that's your thesis statement, and everything along the page is going to reinforce that thesis statement. But when you make one of those essays, your first paragraph, that's your intro argument, right? So that's kind of your lighter points. That's where you're setting up the rest of the things you're going to argue for, the rest of the things you're going to include. And you're building up in your third point, in your third paragraph. That's where you're really hitting home, you're driving home your hardest argument. And then you have your conclusion paragraph, and that's where you restate your thesis statement. So if your thesis statement is Shane College is the premium option for working parents, or the premium option for short-term training, or the premium option for hands-on trades career training, whatever it is, you're going to reiterate that towards the bottom of the page. And that's when you're leading them along. Now, okay, now what? That's when you lead into your
strong call to action.
Yeah. And now you're going to also be paired. You're going to have a designer is going to know, we're going to pepper in some call to actions. There's going to be, of course, buttons along the page. So for any of you who were in Sasha's talk earlier, and Shane, you mentioned this great point I thought was so interesting, is that people don't necessarily read in a linear fashion. So your reader, your prospect, when they come to the page, they don't necessarily read the story start to finish. But what I maintain is that when they're jumping around on the page, if they're that type of reader or they're a scanner, we instinctually know when they scan to the bottom of the page, that's because they know that it's intro stuff up here. They know that that's not relevant to them. It's like the type of person who likes to pick up. I had a friend who loves to read the final chapter of a book before they read the rest, because they just like to know where they're going, I guess. So even though not every reader will read linear fashion start to finish, when you organize your page in this way, that will still appeal to those readers who jump around, because they are jumping around in that way. They're still expecting information to be laid out in a traditional fashion. That's still how our brains want to take stuff in. That's still, if they're skipping a section, it's because they know it's there and they want to get to that. If that makes,
that makes great sense. And Katie, I think it should be noted that nowhere in your classic story arc is there room for, back in 1969 when we founded the school, nowhere does that exist on this landing page, right?
That is in the epilogue.
Yes, there's no history lessons. Those can be presented as footnotes, and when we've seen landing pages underperform, as an example, right, which is a thing we track very closely, often the reason we've drifted off course, and it's been a little bit too much time in history lessons and not enough time focused on who the prospect is, painting a picture of the career, supporting that with stats, supporting that with proof and sort of the benefits that the school has to offer, right? It's almost always we've gotten off course inadvertently, and when we course correct on this model, performance goes up. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say off course, and then yeah, that this other misstep is just misordering the information. So you might have, again, some really excellent information about your school, some really excellent features, but if you lead with that, if you put that up in chapter 1, if you're putting up it at the top of the page, it's too early and it doesn't have value for them. That you're watching Whovillians sing about Christmas and you don't know why it's valuable because you don't know that Christmas was stolen.
Okay, so we got about 4 minutes, Katie. So
Sure.
I'll open it up for either questions, and I think, do you have an example landing page handy that you could bring up?
Yeah, and just as I'm doing that, the one other, oh boy, do I?
Is there anyone have any questions while Katie's getting organized there?
So are we looking at, I've got one other point I will add is because just the title of the talk was ads and landing pages. And so really, really briefly, and this could be a whole other talk and I'm sure will be, but your ad has to match your landing page. Think of, if we're talking to stay on the story metaphor, your ad is the preview. If you watch an amazing preview, if you see like just a killer movie preview, and then you go to watch that movie and it is nothing like that preview, you know, you're going to turn that movie off. Yeah. Deb knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you're right. Super frustrating, right? It's misleading.
Because these are stories. You've sold them on a story that they're going to be told, and then you haven't followed through. So if you have an ad that's about you can work from home with this career, and then that's not on the page or that's not highlighted really prominently, it's not immediately clear that I'm following that thought process, they're going to bounce off that page for sure. Yeah, but I do have a page up. So I just, I'm not sure.
We're not seeing it.
Yeah, I was going to say, oh, you're not seeing it?
No, we're not seeing it.
Oh no, what are you seeing?
So in share screen, if you click on that, you might have to select the.
Oh yeah.
There you go. You need a little thumbs up button. Oh, there's reactions. Can do that. Okay, so this is a typical landing page. This is our current best practice template.
Yeah.
Yeah, so walk us through it just in the, whatever, we got a minute and a half. Walk us through it briefly in this story context. So we've got the, the logo and the branding and the. Oh,
yeah, so what we got, yeah. So this is one as well where we did a test and we ended up getting a 40%. What we realized in this test was that the story we were trying to tell, we were trying to tell a story about every single IT program that Asher offered. And that was overwhelming. The story that people wanted to hear was just about that they are the IT courses in general. So that's why you'll see, that's what's reflected here in the headline. That's what we're teaching about here. Yeah, I know we've got just over a minute here. So yeah, again, this is setting the stage here in our headline and our intro.
Yeah, but paragraph. This is, Katie, it's beautiful. An IT professional's day is never the same. They're the people who test and build and install and repair and maintain. So this is about what that person is, right? Online learning means you can begin right away. Paints a story. It's so nice.
Yeah, and yeah, these are opening chapters. This is where you're setting a scene. You're setting them up. Again, I only have about a minute left. This next section, this is one that we've seen. This is the importance of a COVID disclaimer is going to depend, of course, on your location and how important that is for your prospects, whether you have pivoted to just being online or not. But that's sort of a just of the minute thing. But again, now we're easing them through. Again, we're still talking. You can see here, if you enjoy stimulating work, if fulfilling employment, competitive salary, you're still talking about the career itself, and then why become an IT professional. So we're still, again, this is, now we're getting into our proof about the career. 10 seconds here, program details. Now you can see, now we're getting into social proof here. What our graduates say. So more testimonials here. Now we're